Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Touring Israel podcast. I'm Emmanuel Kadosh, and I'm joined by the founder of Touring Israel, Joe. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Tell me a little bit about where you are because I know I'm at home, but where are you?
So I'm at the edge of Kibbutz Megiddo, overlooking the Jezreel Valley and Tel Megiddo, which is also known as Armageddon.
Okay, so you have obviously a lot of experience touring. You have a lot of experience being in Israel. Tell me a little bit about how you started touring Israel. Where did it come from?
That's an interesting question. In the year 2000, I became a tour guide and I started working for a bunch of these big companies who are always telling us, where to eat and where to shop and go to this site and that site and things I didn't necessarily agree with. And I would just do my own thing. And eventually they stopped working with me because I wasn't following them to the letter. So I had to start my own company if I wanted to work. And that's what I did. And it just got popular.
So how do you guys, what are the different types of tours that you guys are offering? Are they, longer tours? Are they shorter tours? Can you, specify or cater to all different kinds of communities?
So yes, that's actually what separates us, I believe, from most other companies is we call we'll get an inquiry and our team, Jonathan Rose, gives them a call, and then together in conjunction with our tour guides who work in-house, they glean from these people exactly what their interests are and what stream of Christianity they're from, because for the different streams, there are different sites and different interests. And then the team together will talk about it with me as well, and we'll put together a specialized, custom, tailor-made itinerary just for them.
So you're okay, so just for them, right? And
Right.
I know that Touring Israel tries to separate themselves from, on one hand going to the highlighted Christian sites that most people know about, but what differentiates Touring Israel from other touring companies, specifically when it comes to the Christian heritage sites? I know that try to take them to places that they might not know, but give me a
Right.
little bit more. Tell me a little bit about the experience as someone coming in looking for a different Christian heritage site tour.
Right. So, for instance, I studied here at the University of Haifa. I did my PhD there in Protestantism in Israel, and I've guided Christians for over 20 years. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially with the Protestant and the evangelical streams, is that those type of tourists to Israel, they want to be in nature. They want to see the places where Jesus was and his disciples were and the prophets were and the kings of Israel were, kind of like in the natural pristine setting. They don't want to go into a cathedral. They don't want to go into a modern building to see a mosaic floor. They want to see those things out as close as possible as they were 3,000 years ago. So for instance, at the end of the Gospel of Mark, Mary go into the tomb, which was in a garden outside, and they're worried about who's going to roll the stone away from the tomb, away from the cave where Jesus was entombed. And they found that the tomb had already been rolled away, that the stone had already been rolled away from the tomb. So what I do is I will take, now that tomb no longer exists. The Romans destroyed the tomb. The Orthodox built a giant cathedral over it. So what I will do is two things. I will go to a first century Jewish tomb. Maybe it was Jesus's tomb, but the tradition is it's Joseph of Arimathea's tomb inside the cathedral to show them what Jesus's tomb would have looked like, with the niche where the stone that was rolled away was, and where the niche where the body was laid. And I'll also take them, before we go there, to King Herod's family tomb, which is outside the King David Hotel in a beautiful park, where this stone that looks like a round chiseled wheel, where it still exists in a first century Jewish tomb. So I try to show them what it would have looked like, and then I try to get them as close as possible to the spot where it happened, in a setting where it had happened to give them that feeling so they could pray, so they can meditate. It's a more spiritual type of trip rather than just a sightseeing trip.
So I do want to highlight maybe top 3 Christian heritage sites that are most common to visit or hold as much significance for people who want to come visit Israel for the first time, who want to connect a little bit more with the Holy Land, and obviously get your take on it. So what would you say, having experience and also knowing the history behind it, are the, let's say, top 3, top 5 Christian heritage sites to visit in Israel?
Wow, there are just so many. All the sites from the Bible are here, most of them. So, but the top 5, I mean, I would say you have the tomb of Jesus. So there's it's contested whether it's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or the Garden Tomb. So we would take the Protestant Christian believer to both sites, and I would take them to those spots that I told you about before, and I would also take them to the Garden Tomb, which is an early Christian tomb that in a garden setting with places for reflection, and it's just outside the old city, so it's close enough to the spot where it may have happened, where the traditional site is, where they get the feeling. So they would go to both sites. So that's number 1, the Garden Tomb. The second site I would take them to is on Mount Zion. There's the Church of Gallicantu, which means in Latin, the place of the crowing rooster. There's a story in John, chapter 9, I believe, where Peter denies Jesus 3 times. And here it's the house of Caiaphas, the high priest, who turns Jesus over to be tried to Pontius Pilate. And in that area, there are stairs from the 1st century that lead down to the Temple Mount and then over to the Mount of Olives. So if you're reading John chapters 8 and 9, you really can watch that whole story unfold from the Last Supper to where he's betrayed by Judas, and then he makes his way down to the temple courts. And even during that same time period, he tells the blind man to go wash in the Siloam pool. So the second spot would be on Mount Zion at Gallicantu. You have the prison of Christ and where Jesus was held by Caiaphas, and the holy stairs. And the third site is the City of David area. In the City of David area, you have that Siloam pool, and which was recently found, and they're currently excavating it. It's where when Jesus comes out of the temple in John chapter 8, and it says he's walking along the way. What's the walking along the way? Well, he leaves the temple, and we have found the entrances and the exit of the Temple Mount. He probably comes down the southern stairs, where today we call it the Davidson Center, and then walks, and this is where he stumbles upon a blind man and tells him, spits in the ground, rubs mud in his eye, and tells him to go wash in the Siloam pool. He washes his eyes out and he can see. So we have in the City of David, we have the Siloam pool, we have the road that leads up to the Davidson Center in the Temple Mount, and we have King David's palace. So to review in the top 3, I would say the Garden Tomb and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where the resurrection and the crucifixion and the resurrection took place. We have Mount Zion and the Church of Gallicantu, where you have the holy stairs and the actual cell, the prison where Jesus was kept. And we have number 3, the City of David, where you have the Siloam pool, and the main road of Jerusalem in the 1st century that Jesus would have walked up and down when he's doing miracles. And he walks up to the Temple Mount, to the Davidson Center, and where he debates with the teachers of the law there, and they're debating whether an adulteress should be stoned or not. And he says, famously, let those without sin cast the first stone. So, those would be 4 and 5 in my book. The Davidson Center, with this incredible archaeology from the 1st century, where Jesus definitely, walked along the way. And the 5th, of course, is the Temple Mount, where he debates the teachers of the law, and he turns over the money changers' tables. So there's five five good ones. I can go on and on all day.
Joe, I can honestly listen to you go on and on all day. It's like you're talking, it's like you're expressing it from like a history book that you've memorized your entire life. And it's interesting because, I'm Jewish and you're Jewish, and I really wanted to ask you something. How do Christian tourist visitors coming in that are looking, to immerse themselves in this experience and get the historical, significance of the Holy Land, how do they react to you having all this knowledge, to you being the one that's leading the tours? Like, I don't know if it's even something to ask, but it's actually very interesting because you do have a lot of history when it comes to the Christian heritage sites of Israel. You have a lot of knowledge around that. So have you ever gotten any, not backlash, but have you ever gotten any, back and forth about you being the one leading the tours?
Yes, so all the time. Well, for number one, Israel, there aren't a lot of Protestant Christians in Israel. So, I mean, I can count on one hand the tour guides who are maybe two that I know of.
Interesting.
And that doesn't mean, well, there aren't many Protestants here. That doesn't mean they're the best tour guides either.
Right.
Not that they're not. I don't know. There are several Catholic and Orthodox Christian tour guides, and one of them we actually use quite often, who's amazing. So if that's what they want, that's great. When I'm guiding the people, I'm doing it from their perspective. I'm not trying to challenge anyone's faith. I'm a Jew, but what's important to understand, and I try to point this out for everyone, Jesus comes to preach to the lost sheep of Israel. I mean, he says it himself. In Matthew chapter 5, he says, I have not come here to change one letter of the law. I've come here to enforce it. So there's a lot, in the Jewish world, we as Jews we look at the New Testament and we're like, well, that's not our Bible. We don't even look at it. We don't study it. I never was a fan of that view. To me, the New Testament is much like the Talmud. It was written mostly by Jews. And so to me, a lot of the parables that Jesus is talking about, like the parable of the Good Samaritan, is much like a Talmudic parable. So and these are Jews talking. Jesus and his disciples were Jews. So I don't see any problem talking about Jesus, who was a rabbi, and his lesson to the people. Now, whether the question of whether Jesus was Messiah or God himself, that I don't believe that, but that doesn't mean they don't believe that. And that doesn't mean that God doesn't have a plan for me as a Jew and a plan for them as Christians. His plan for us, the two of us, may be two parallel paths to get to the same end game.
Interesting.
A lot of the evangelicals believe that the Jews from around the world should come back to Israel to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem before the final battle of Armageddon in this valley, the Valley of Armageddon. Before that happens, or maybe after it happens, there'll be a battle here of Armageddon when the Jews see the light that Jesus has returned and that he is the Messiah. Now, if that happens, and I'm here well, when it happens and I see it happening, who knows, maybe I will become a believer. But until that happens, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm against their view. I'm not at all against their view. Right. We have an old saying as Jews. It's actually a Hasidic interpretation of the Torah, that the Bible or the Torah is like a diamond. You hold it up to the light and you see 70 different angles, and some of those angles or interpretations could be contradictory, but that doesn't mean that they're false. Right. They can all be true at the same time, and it's open to interpretation, and they're all very beautiful. So I'm not here to question anyone's faith. I'm just here to take them on their journey.
Amazing. So speaking of journey, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been dealing with, tourists from all over the world while there's been, things going on in Israel or whatever that might be. How has this specific year been different? Since October 7th, how have you, changed the way that you've either planned the tours? How have you changed the way that you've, conducted the tours? And how have you tried combining solidarity for local communities with the tours? Of course, we can speak about it separately, but it's all hand in hand at the end of the day.
Right. Well, for the most part, the few tours that we've done this last year have mostly been solidarity tours. Actually, we're doing a bar mitzvah tour right now, and I'm doing a hiking tour next week. But the couple dozen tours that we've done the last year have been solidarity tours where various different groups, Jews and Christians, come, either families and friends or missions of synagogues or other groups. They come to show their solidarity with the people of Israel, especially the kibbutzim, these communal communities down by the Gaza envelope, where a lot of these atrocities happened on October 7th that were invaded and overrun and kidnapped. So what we've been doing is taking people down there, not just to see what happened firsthand and bear witness to it, but to actually help. So like to work in the fields, to donate money to rebuild the kibbutz.
You guys are doing grilling with soldiers as well, with IDF soldiers.
What we do is we go to a forward army
sometimes
unit
even
with, I don't want to into Gaza, but
chef,
close. We grill for them, and we sponsor, meals for them. And the people in Gaza, the soldiers in Gaza, can come out and get sandwiches. And the guys and girls right on the border can sit with us. And the people serve them and they cook for them and they get to hear their stories. So, I mean, that's an absolute highlight. Sometimes artillery shells are going off. We never take people into dangerous area. It seems like the war in Gaza is not ending, but we control most of Gaza. The army is inside Gaza, and not many, if any, rockets are emanating from Gaza anymore. It looks like now that the war in Lebanon is wrapping up today. So hopefully it seems that this is the end, and some normal tourism will also start to come back soon.
Amazing. So I think we've pretty much covered everything that we wanted to speak about. Christmas is, I'm here in New York, so Christmas is definitely felt on its way here. And I know that a lot of people from around the world had a really interesting year, to say the least. I think the world is flipped upside down, and everyone's always looking for a little bit of hope and a little bit of, motivation and a little light, I guess you could say. I wanted to finish out by asking you, first of all, how do you feel that touring Israel, everything that we discussed today, Christian tours, Jewish tours, whatever type of tours that we're doing, how do you feel like touring Israel has been able to balance the historical, the spiritual, and the current political landscape in the tours that you guys are going to be doing moving forward?
Well, moving forward, again, we talk to the people. We want to hear what they want to see, what their perspective is, if they want to hear different sides of the story. And whatever they want to do, we'll give that to them. Some of the things that we do is we'll sit down with Yosef Haddad, who's a Christian Israeli Arab from Nazareth, which is just over my shoulder as well, who served in the Israeli army. And he talks about how being an Arab in Israel, how that affects him and what they need to do to move forward, and how he fits into the mosaic of the people of Israel. We'll talk to Khalid Abu Tomeh, who is a Muslim Palestinian from East Jerusalem with Israeli citizenship, who's a journalist and who was a stringer for NBC News in Gaza for 20 years. Now he writes for the Jerusalem Post. We'll sit down with him over breakfast at the David Citadel Hotel, and he'll talk about his experiences in Gaza. We'll also now talk to soldiers. We'll talk to some of the refugees from the kibbutzim on the border with Lebanon, or from some of the survivors of the Nova Festival. And we'll go to the site of the Nova Festival. So we'll try to talk about the root causes of the conflict, how to try to solve the conflict,
Right.
why everything's changed since October 7th, where the peace
Exactly.
camp lies, where the settlers' vision lies, the
Mhm.
vast political landscape, which has changed dramatically over the year. We'll talk about the problems with the government. We can meet with government officials, the judicial overhaul. We'll talk about all that stuff, but we're still going to hit the Western Wall and the Western Wall tunnels, and we'll go up to Capernaum and the Mount of Beatitudes on the Sea of Galilee. As this war seems to be wrapping up, it looks like we'll be able to go back and to see all aspects of Israel.
Amazing. So, what lasting impression do you hope that, all the tours, the minimal tours that you guys have had in the last year due to October 7th and the war, what do you hope that they took away from their tour? And what do you hope that future visitors that take part in a Touring Israel tour take away from their visit?
Well, I definitely think that the tourists in the last year and a month have taken away that the people of Israel are resilient, and that we've made mistakes and we continue to make mistakes, but that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And we're just coming out of this stronger, and we will continue to be strong, and keep our heads up, and fight when we have to fight, and make peace when we can make peace, and continue about our business. That's one thing Israelis are well known for. If something bad happens, you take your punches, you try to save who you can save and what you can save, sweep away the carnage, rebuild, and go forward. And we've been fighting this fight for 3,200 years, and we'll probably have to keep fighting it for another 3,200 years. But Israel's not going anywhere. It's safe to come. Probably now it's going to be safer than it's ever been.
Yeah.
We've taken care of business, and our guard is up, and it's basically time to move forward. And that's what people are going to come here to realize, that we're strong, we're smart, we're moving forward, and they should join us rather than write us off.
100%. And definitely, come, like you said, to meet the Israeli people, to see, what the resilience that they've had over the last year, and also how they're rebuilding. You guys are giving people around the world the opportunity to experience what, obviously the history of what happened on October 7th, but also at the same time, the history of Israel simultaneously, and also to see firsthand how we're rebuilding and growing from the horrific year that we've had. So, Joe, thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like the visitors, potential visitors, past visitors to know and to share?
Well, just that the economy's taken a hit. We've taken a hit in the foreign press. The message out there about Israel is definitely warped. So two things. Number one, what you're seeing in the news or reading about in the news isn't what's actually happened on the ground. So you should come and see for yourself, number one. Number two is that because we've taken this financial hit to our economy, both through high tech and import and exporting and tourism, we could really use your help. Israel is a partnership between the Friends of Israel, Jews and Christians, and the Israelis themselves. And we need you. We will be fine, but we can always use your help. And the best way to help is to come and visit, and be a partnership in this project of building the state.
It's like you said, it's the project of building this state, and that's such an honor, and it's such a important thing to be a part of. Throughout history, people it takes a village, it takes an actual village. And so we need as many people coming to Israel, showing their support, trying to help rebuild, everything that we've experienced over the last year and over the last thousands of years. And also to see the good side of Israel. Like you said, I'm an Israeli living in America right now, and I can tell you firsthand that the things that we hear are just crazy, right? Like the things that are going on in the media. And I've been to Israel since October 7th. So I've experienced what it's been like. And, you've been living there, so you obviously can tell us more than I can. But the media is, like you said, very warped. And if you wanna, give the benefit of the doubt, come visit Israel, come see it for yourself, come experience. Every person that's come out of Israel that I've ever spoken to has always loved the people, loved the food, and loved the vibe, felt safer in Israel than they ever thought imaginable, which I can definitely attest to as well. So, Joe, thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully, this will be the first of many podcasts that we do for touring Israel and to experience and explain the beautiful land of Israel and everything that you guys are offering for visitors who have been and visitors who've never been. So thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.